And then I think if you stand to the side, you can do the introduction.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay.
Let's get started. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, once I get back. Hi everyone. That's everyone here and on YouTube. Hi. I'm clearly live. Hello and welcome to 192 Books. I'm Terrence Review, the manager. And I present this event, Robert Gluck and Mary Vanna Hamilton, in conversation for the launch of About Ed by NYRB, of which we have a few people here. Who's here from NYRB? All right. And I want to thank my colleagues Lisa Knowlton and Liz Janoff and Catherine Taylor and Davey Donto at the Glück Gallery for their video and sound help. So, Robert Gluck is the author of more than 10 books of poetry and prose, including Reader, and with Bruce Boone, La Fontaine, with Camille Roy and Gail Scott. We have the anthology Fighting the Error, Writers Explore Narrative, which is based on narrativity, an online journal they edited. Gluck founded the San Francisco-based New Narrative Movement with Bruce Boone and Camille Roy and others in the early 1980s in reaction to language poetry. New narrative writing celebrates LGBTQ identity, autobiography. Yeah, I put a little stink on language. Sorry.
Just watch it.
Sorry. Gluck served as the co-director of Small Press Traffic, a nonprofit literary organization at the Center of Innovative and Experimental Writing in San Francisco, California, founded in 1974. He is an emeritus professor at San Francisco State, where he was director of the Poetry Center in San Francisco. And Rainer Diana Hamilton's the author of 3 books: God Was Right, The Awful Truth, and Okay, Okay, and 4 chapters. They write poetry, fiction, and criticism about style, crying, shit, kisses, dreams, painting, writing, and rereading. You can walk through audio recordings of their dreams in the first-person shooter by Alejandro Miguel Justino Crawford, Manhattan's Dream. Their poetry and criticism have appeared in Bomb, Freeze, Art in America, Lambda Literary and Social Text Journal, among others. They received their PhD in comparative literature from Cornell, and they currently work as director of Baruch College Writing Center. This event is being live streamed and will be available at PCG Studio on the Paula Cooper Gallery website. You'll be able to view it there and other readings we've done. We have a bunch of Gluck's books there. We have a bunch of Rainer Diana's books there. And I'll pass it over to Rainer. Thanks. Oh, wait, sorry to follow.
Just leaning as close to the mic as you can.
Yeah, that's great.
Can everybody hear me?
They're for YouTube, not for the audience.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they not on?
They're on for the YouTube video.
For this video. Okay. All right.
Let's start by thinking about the process. Writing, you wrote about Ed over the last 20 years, the same period in which you were writing Gluck and poetry. And do you want to talk about the process of writing?
Well, I wish there was a process. Maybe it wouldn't have taken 20 years.
Can you speak louder, please? If that's
Okay.
possible. Thank you.
So I wish there was a process. It wouldn't have taken that long. I did other things over the course of those years. I sliced an onion. I cut my toenail. There was the collected essays came out. There was a book of short fiction that came out. There was a collaborative book of poetry that came out. So I was doing other things. I think it took so long because for two reasons. I didn't want to say goodbye to Ed because finishing this book also meant saying goodbye to him in another department of life. And I think I needed to become older before I could really do what I wanted to do in this book and know what I needed to know. I usually have a pretty good idea of what I want a book to be, but often I make it such a difficult. It doesn't become interesting to me until I make it an almost insoluble problem. And then I'm ready to engage with it.
And I wanted to ask you about how you used Ed's dream journals in the book, in part because, as you know, I've been obsessed with the use of his journals for a while. A decade ago, you said that you were planning to make all the leather in the book come from Ed's and something else.
Don't you think that's nice? To
I
have
love it.
from his dreams.
And I spent all the time waiting for this book, thinking about like how I could make leather out of other people's dreams. But I think the dreams became a lot more than leather. And I wonder.
Yes. So, well, in the first place, Ed was a great dreamer. We would wake up in the morning and he would say, well, here's my dream. And then here's my dream before that. And then here's my dream before that, back into the night in Technicolor. With huge, just complete, total recall of his dreams. So I got him writing them out. And we both sort of pillaged them for images. Reading them again, I was often surprised to come across an image that was actually from one of my poems from that era. We used each other's lives quite a bit in our different art forms. He was an artist. You can find his work online, in fact. There's a website devoted to him. But I wanted to use his dreams, a big bunch of his dreams in the book. And the problem for me in the book, actually, one of the big problems was how to do that, how to use them. And in the end, one friend said, no, you should just divide them up in 10-page chunks. And that would have been an interesting idea, a good idea, but I just couldn't do it. In the end, I needed them to be a big lump. I wanted them to be kind of I started copying out dreams, so they're decades of dreams. So I copied out about 300 pages. And then I winnowed that down to about 50 pages. Then I just simply couldn't go any farther. I tried, I gave them to friends, I said, help me edit this down. And I couldn't accept anybody's suggestions. And so finally, that was it. And what I want people to experience is a kind of Ed and the Bardo, so you meet Ed, and you see him. The dreams go backwards as though through one night, but they also go backwards through his life, and you see his life cracking through the dreams. And so there's this thing before that, and then another thing before that, and then just as though Ed were telling them to. And I guess my main idea was Well, so there's this parable from the Gnostic Gospels that has beguiled me for decades, and so I'm going to tell it to you now. So Jesus is walking along. So this is the Gospel of Thomas. Jesus is walking along with his disciples, and they come to a nursing woman, and his disciples say, "Is this what heaven looks like?" And which is interesting right there, isn't it? That heaven could be that breakdown of ego boundaries between a mother and child. Jesus says no. He says, and then he makes a list. He says, well, when the inside is like the outside, and the male is like the female, and the female is like the male, and there's this list of binaries that are collapsing. That's interesting. But then he goes on and says, and when an eye replaces an eye, and a foot replaces a foot, and an image replaces an image, then you will be in heaven. What does that mean? Well, at any rate, I used that as an idea for what I wanted the last section of this book to be. Kind of in which image replaces image replaces image. And in fact, I also wanted that for the long poem that was published this year. They have it in common. There was a book, a long poem called I Boombox that was published earlier this year by Roof Books. And that was kind of the idea behind that too, just image replaces image replaces image.
Elsewhere in the book, you talk about, you say, my poems and Ed's paintings are dated, but Ed's dreams speak the era. And I wonder, why do you think dreams don't become dated?
I really don't know. Some
Yeah.
art doesn't become dated,
Right.
but yeah, I think ours. His dreams were full of galaxies exploding and, you know, sort of peacock feathers and orgasms. So like the 70s. So
I was thinking about iBoombox.
hopefully not everything is that we did was dated.
I mean, I was only quoting.
Although I
I'm
don't-
certain I would agree.
My goal is not to be relevant.
Thinking about the orgasms in streams, there's I keep rereading this line in Elements of a Coffee Service and Sex Story where you say that you want to write about sex, good sex, without boasting, descriptive, without looking like plumbing, happy, avoiding the brand armpits of yours. And there's a sex scene in about Ed that really does that beautifully, but it's Ed's first sexual experience, and it hinges on this misreading, on this mishearing, on thinking, I won't spoil it, you can if you want to, but on thinking the partner is saying something other than what they're saying, and there's a great punchline and revelation, and finally hears, but it reminded me a lot of iBoombox, which relies on these kind of generative misrecognitions.
Yes. Yes.
I wonder if you want to read that.
Yes, I do. I want to read a little bit from my Boombox, just to give you a taste of it. iBoombox is like a list of my misreadings, and I kept a journal by my bed. I still do. It's sort of like my version of a modernist long poem that will only be interrupted by the author's death. So it will go on and on, and so it's skinny. Looks like this. The lines are often just 4 syllables. It's since I wanted to use the inside to the unconscious like an outside. So this is in some ways news from the outside. I think there's kind of a public quality to the unconscious, and so I wanted to sort of like Spicer's radio. I wanted there to be a feeling of outsideness to this. And it's grueling. There are a lot of grueling sexual puns and other kinds of puns. Good old fences make good neighbors. So there are a lot of grueling, well, anyway, but you would think that I was just reading pornography nonstop based on this, but it's actually mostly the New York Times. Or the tiny, oh, and I say or, that's the connective. Instead of and, I don't want it to be cumulative. Again, I want things to replace. So the connective article is or. Conjunction. Or the tiny soundtrack quietly worshiping the consonants, letting an eternal arrow. Is Frank Stilla's mother finally proud? Are academics villagers at heart? Marjorie Perloff's reading O'Hara. Someone holds my hand at the edge of the photograph. What's on at the come? Say hi, stay hard. Pre-Christian delivery service. De-scramble the eggs, someone befalls me. Chaos, the most beautiful music. As I thought death into existence. Soldiers of time name a single living stone or good sun becoming. There's nothing so sincere as waste. Clouds make me angry. Salty or sad or signifying release. Hot bottom needs two bipeds. Like that. It's just like what a low bottom line my unconscious has. Hot bottom needs two bipeds. Not unentitled. She pivoted her sex on my hand. The inner world fluttered against my mouth and smelled easily. Unfortunating veil. Really, how do we speak? I'd like to tell time what to do. Death rises and mingles with the smoke rising through the peaceful wind-soaked trees. Frail Hispanicide army passing through an exotic magazine, or retrograde into the accidental zone, an extremely common zero. Official liar, I better reach you before the pre-washing. I feel so sad it's awesome. Who knows what far-off lights causes the desert to think? Cardio cowboy, who wants to bed the center of attention. Hank's uncut anus boosh. Top daddy for ruin. Wipe the cock off your face. Date for aliens who overwhelm the fussy toaster ovens of the planet actors. The surrealist majority. The false note of a permanent self, gargantuan strawberry. There was a group at Columbia called Students, making it more expensive for the upper case while I pray to the God of this sentence. First thought, best thought, LOL. He left me, but also entered me. We climbed among the indistinct plants. He had bored, stubby hands. Crippled gay guy Eric Clapton will play a pair of shadows. Rain or cold hand made the street a fury of sublime factory. A shall we wave before she leaves umbilical indescribabilia? Or a light snow was feeling life's plan B. Fuck luck. Even a line of text is a long, narrow bed where covers are completely deserted, etched in shades of gay. I'll stop there. But it goes on. 100 pages.
Shiv wanted me to ask you about the middle distance. Instead of the in about Ed, you often talk about things happening in the middle distance.
Uh-huh.
Why?
Yeah, it's my fancy that the middle distance, which we inherited as a kind of a place of regulation almost, is also kind of a death, like where death happens in fiction. It's a kind of death. And it's part of a chain of regulation, I would say, that people kind of unknowingly paid attention to, unknowingly lived in. I like why should somebody be introduced with like a hat that they're wearing? Why not how they experience their death? Why not how they experience their body in some way? Why not what their what orgasm feels like to them, or anything, or what how their ancestors came on a boat, or how they experienced childhood. Why are we? It's diminishing to settle for that, and it's not necessary. It's just like following the rule. It's what you're taught in an MFA fiction class. Like, did Nancy really say that? And Ben said this, and and somebody's cousin said that. It doesn't have to be like that. And I think humans are just bigger than that, and I want to portray a human that is both bigger and also more collaborative, like a self that is a collaborative self. So that's all against me this case. Yeah, of course I use it. But I also do other things.
That's true. I'm glad. Now I'm stuck with the answer to this question, but it relates to. I wanted to ask.
Probably it's not really. I almost never answer a question.
I wanted to talk to you about the Everyman, which is the title of the first part of the book, and also one of the chapter titles, and also the title of a 15th century play you're drawing on, and also Everyman, the sort of like regular guy. And in your recent interview with Lucy Ives for the Paris Review, you were talking about Lukács, that reading him let you see yourself as a subject of history, which you describe as coming from the dark night of the suburbs. Throughout about Ed, I felt like you were taking this kind of dignity that maybe like early 20th century narrative theory gave the individual writer to like narrate their collective experience. I feel like you were giving that not just to the writing subject, but to everyone who tells the story about themselves. There's this kind of dignifying of any effort a neighbor or anyone makes to begin to describe themselves, and that seems most telling in the fact that this book about Ed's death is open with Ed on his map here.
Yes.
Describing his avoidance of going to the doctor. This is parallel, like a first-rate man next door is the same problem confronting another diagnosis as Ed. And I wanted to ask you why it's a novel this map.
Yeah, I kind of circled in on Ed. He's not there at the beginning, but then he's there a lot. I had kind of a community romance with my across the street neighbor, Matt. It was kind of the mayor of the street. He knew everybody's business. And I wanted to look at his death as a kind of death that's very located inside of the community. He believed that the facts of people's lives were important. He was a terrible gossip, but he believed that that was important. Somebody's grandmother comes from Auburn. He would want to know that. That was important to him. And to me, there's always kind of this kind of element of disbelief in my character, but Bob in the book, but also Bob sitting there. I thought, I don't believe the street's going to be out there in the morning when I go out. I'm amazed that the world's still there. And Mac is just like rooting for reality. And so I just wanted to bring that into the book. That's really what he's there for.
He's there as like the person who knows that reality keeps going.
Yes, and that it's important beyond him, so that his life, it's like he believes in it, and then there's this change of scale where he says life is important even when I'm not around. Ed had that too, so they shared that. he believed that the present was important even when it didn't include him. And there are parts of the book that discuss that. And so that, I just wanted to look at that.
Yeah, I was thinking, I wanted to ask you a question that was about kind of fidelity to reality, but I hadn't thought about that requiring first a faith that reality is there, that it's something that can be depended on and
It's not really there.
it's not, yeah. But for Magda, maybe for a moment. But in the chapter where you're writing about Ed planning his tomb, the diorama, he's making first columbarium, you're asking yourself a bunch of things about sort of politics in the Bush era, but you're also asking yourself, can I link my life experience outside of it? And you say the public sphere is so debased that saying anything true is a breach of etiquette, which,
That was the 80s.
yeah, it's all different now.
That began in the 80s.
But I was thinking a lot about that, I don't know, the responsibility to get things right versus the sense that saying anything true is a breach of etiquette. And when I asked you this earlier in the week, you said you didn't care about getting the 80s right, or sex right, or liberation right, or AIDS right, but you cared about this getting Ed's story right. And I'm sorry,
Yeah,
saying
maybe
more.
that was maybe putting it too.
Yeah. You don't
I care
stand
a
by
little
it.
bit, no,
No.
I care a little bit, a bit about other things, but yeah.
Of course, yes. But I guess the question I wanted to ask was like, how do you think about that idea of being faithful to what really happened in a period or a relationship?
It's hard to write about somebody's life after they've died, and it takes a kind of tact. And I thought about that quite a lot. Like, what is the tact? What is that tact? And what does it consist of? In Ed's case, it didn't eliminate him as a wild child because he was one and he wanted to be portrayed that way. I asked him. And it's not as though I have a formula because I don't, but it's something that is, you just have to ask yourself in each instance, does this follow a kind of a truth? Also, it was very hard to eliminate things. I mean, not everything could be in this book. And so that was a problem too, what to eliminate. It was like I would be harming him if I eliminated the wrong thing. And so I felt very keyed in to what he might, what he might be thinking at any given time. We were artists together in the 70s, and as I say, we pillaged each other's lives quite a bit. So it wasn't as though I felt I was, using some people's lives, there's perhaps a different kind of restraint where they might have some anxiety about how they're portrayed in a novel or a poem. But that wasn't the case. So in that sense, I had permission to do what I wanted. But what I wanted was hard to figure out.
One of the things that seems really challenging about it to me is in terms of processes, like the overlapping periods where you're checking in and reflecting. Where it's like in the Bob and Ed chapter, it's set in 1993, but it opens with a dream events from 1980, and it's recounting a night in 1970 when we met, where the narrator learns in 93 that an infidelity happened 14 years earlier, right? There's like,
Yes.
each moment you have to remember what you felt at a moment where you remember what you felt at a moment you remembered. Like,
Yes. It was so crazy. There were so many. I really had to, at the end, sort out where the present of the book was. And one thing that is true is that I wanted Ed to be in the present tense until he died, and then he switches to the past tense. And that's a really a turning point in the book. And but juggling the tenses was like almost like an acrobatic or sculptural more. It was a feeling of kind of sculpture, making sculpture, because the tenses were just flying all over the place. I hope they're sorted out correctly.
in addition to the tenses, there's the question of which person you speak in, or you say at some point that you're trying really hard not to talk to Ed in the second person, but instead you often talk in the first person about him.
Yes.
Um,
Well, he's there.
Right. Yeah. No, but I mean like as Ed.
Yes.
And I'm curious about that that sort of prohibition.
Oh, I talk. Yes. There are places in the book where Ed is speaking, and some of those places he helped me with before he died. I asked I asked him to give me notes on the day that he was diagnosed with AIDS and other times, and I taped him and did things like that. So I wanted to bring his voice into the book. And his dreams, which, as I say, I worked on like the devil. I worked on so hard, but they're still his dreams, and it's still his voice. And I see my books. My books tend to be collaborative in some way, and that's this book's collaboration is that.
And the novels are really focused on a singular relationship. Is the fact that it becomes more of a friendship relationship, does that change the sort of mode of narration?
Well, in that it's not a novel of romantic revenge.
Yes, I'm not getting back at them for ever wrong.
No. Yeah, by the time, I mean, we weathered our separation, after we separated, and then became like family. He was always emailing not emailing, but writing to my mother. And she said he didn't mind losing me, but he didn't want to lose my mother. Sure. I brought a couple of things. Here's just a snippet. I'm doing my archives now, and I run into things that could have been in this book all the time. And here's one. See this page? It's probably probably 30 or 40 years old. So this is Ed in the hospital about a nun. So Ed is speaking. I wanted to ask her what kind of person becomes a nun. I heard her talking to someone outside my room, and she said to them, God told me to become a nun to help people. Bob says, so that's the reason. Ed says, no. I wanted to ask her what kind of person follows those instructions. So I brought a little chapter to read and just a few dreams. So this will be about 15 minutes. I hope that's okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Go ahead. This is a chapter. It's called Ed in the Movies. I don't think there's much that you need to know, but if there is, I will stop and tell you. 7 on a warm June evening. Oh, speaking of that, thank you for coming out in the rain. Yeah, in San Francisco, whenever the atmosphere does anything, we're completely undone. 7 on a warm June evening. The glossy light is full. The shadows are mild. Little brown birds make weak metallic trills. I'm walking through Ed's garden to his front door. It's overgrown and orderly. The smell of damp earth and heavy roses. There are fronds and branches to duck under. Red and green marble-sized apples growing out of their flowers on espalier trees. Something in pots. And the brugmansia, night-scented trumpet, sweetly sinister. I climb the wooden steps. The porch light is on already. I'm empty-handed. No. I hold the string of a white pastry box heavy with 2 lemon tarts and 2 chocolate eclairs that satisfy my greed under the pretense of fattening Ed up. He'll probably eat 1 bite. I feel sleepy and itchy as though some emotional demand will be made. And what will I do then? I sense his death behind the door. This is in the late 80s, and he was diagnosed in 85. I don't need to knock. He buzzed me in at the gate. The door swings open. He's very animated. Would you rather see me lifeless? His expression mocks. I hold up the pastry box and would moan with satisfaction. Death is too serious. I hug Ed, and I want to say I love you, but choke on the words, as though I'm lying, but I'm not. I smell the Japanese half of Ed's childhood, soy and ginger. He intends to perfect a recipe for barbecue short ribs as he did for lemon bunt cake and sushi rice. It's Tuesday night, my night with Ed, an ongoing joke of self-interest. I contribute to Ed's welfare by eating complicated meals involving the stove, the oven, and the microwave that take Ed all day to prepare. The table is set. The food is a picture. Roasted pig. I start chewing before it's served, imagining fat. I can't get enough of the salty, burnt sugar succulence. We dissect the flavors, more rice vinegar, ginger. Sophie, a small gray and brown tabby with a vexed expression, heedlessly scrolls against my shoes, burrows into my armpits, and vanishes. Ed pokes at the meat with his chopsticks, takes a few bites of rice, praises himself for eating as much as he does. When we lived together, he could warm up to dinner with a jumbo bag of potato chips. His voice is strong, but the air is seeping out of his posture. He's down to 120 and wears a disorganized expression. He brings me up to date on the daily horrors. He has neuropathy, the nerves along the soles of his feet strum like electric guitars. Some fungus looks like fur in his throat. He started a new med. Dr. Owen said if the new drug causes pain in his muscles, it must mean they are disintegrating. So his body started pulling apart like taffy as the doctor spoke. Owen added that if Ed feels pain in his liver, he should call him at once. Ed tossed and turned all night, a finger jabbing him there. I confess I don't pay much attention to these sagas, which are, like his blathering when we were together, tedious and appalling. I hear myself recite the stupid good advice I bestowed on Ed 2 years ago, my mother's voice in mine, calming, distancing. Ed's days are obviously precious, but also lonely, threadbare, and twisted by fear. What do I have to say? It's still the 80s. I feel so intensely the party is happening elsewhere, you could call my distraction a disease. That is, I feel like I'm reading a bad translation, knowing that a better one exists. Distance installs itself in me from thrillingly difficult technical vocabularies to the ascendancy of the grid on, say, Calvin Klein sheets. Distance replaces the excesses and heartfelt essences of the 70s. Meanwhile, Ed sustains losses, giving up job, travel, movies, increased nakedness before death. He fights a hollowed out feeling, hard to portray, not dramatic. Last winter, flattened under the buzzing lights, Owen told Ed he had a few months left. Ed went home and planted 130 tulip bulbs. When he worked in Golden Gate Park, he would bonsai 200 chrysanthemums for Easter. I'm bloated and wan. My life does not seem to apply and resists being shaped into anecdotes. Striving is vulgar. I've eaten too much fat. While Ed talks, I actually dream for a few seconds. I can't find my pen. And when I do, it's on the kitchen table, laid out between the knife and the spoon. Eating words and writing dinner. My dream sees me this way. What am I leaving out? I remind myself to tape some conversations with Ed. Is that too gruesome? Half asleep, I brew strawberry tea for Ed and black tea for myself. in the blue and white spongeware mugs that belonged to Ed and me when we were together. I'm almost taking them down from my own cupboard. The clear flavor of the tea is so welcome that some of me goes into it. Ed opens a window. I'm surprised by his initiative because I expect nothing from anyone. He actually does eat his share of the pastry, which is a satisfaction. You never cooked like this when we were together, I complained good-naturedly. As though explaining, Ed says, remember Marty, who lived next door? That greasy little beatnik who always wore the same sports coat? I'm surprised Ed knows his name. We had sex. He just finished eating a can of sardines. Ed exhales to show the sardines swarming in Marty's breath. I'm laughing and stung by this 14-year-old infidelity. Jenny and I broke up 3 years ago. A year later, I began seeing Lauren. Lauren lives in New York, but I experience my only moments of hope when I think of him. How to extinguish the useless surgeries. The action of the disease makes Ed's body attractive to me again. Is my love for him realer than I know? I attributed intention to his beauty because it had power over me. I remember the tenderness of snuggling in bed, soft cotton t-shirts, and naked below. The cotton erotic, hot and cold of train stations, a mix of directions. Ed replies with a look. What do you see? The face that detained me for so many years. Galaxies. Why is Ed telling me about Marty? Ed was not confined to beauty and safety. I used him to experience risk, as I do in this story. The rough desire passed around at night by guys in a park or an alley. I'll bet Marty is where Ed discovered rimming. One morning he knew all about it. What a surprise that was. Pleasure hidden like treasure in that scary place. I covered my face in simple justice of representation, and my body made noises that meant it had instincts I'd never considered, like a school of salmon migrating up my butt. These carnal updates from Ed and his primeval romps give our marriage a weird posthumous life. Since we are on the subject, I remind Ed of the evening 15 years earlier when I cooked an elaborate birthday dinner for him. He turned up around midnight, explaining without remorse that he had been patiently guiding Sean into bed, a straight friend he was liberating. Having a reason doesn't mean anything, I cried. I blinked like a flustered professor and my body stuttered. Ed laughed in alarm and mimicked my frantic gesture. Then he offered, "You're just a victim of circumstance." Ed laughs and says, "Well, weren't you?" He places a buttery crumb on his desiccated lip and translates the flavors into a panorama. I ask him if he's painting. Every morning from my studio, I see a nanny push a buggy up the hill. I think she's Nicaraguan. She looks really young. She puts the brake on the buggy, climbs a long set of stairs, unlocks the door, and then goes down for the baby. That buggy points right down the hill, and it's held in place by a thin piece of aluminum. Every day I expect that baby to go flying down the street into traffic. We share an expression of horror. Ed lives on a steep hill down which the buggy already careens. I say, someone has to tell that woman. Ed solemnly agrees. One sentence could save that child's life. But Ed, why don't you tell her? I feel a surge of relief. Finally, I can save someone's life. All you have to do is walk across the street and tell her. It's so easy. But Ed has a question. You think I should tell her? Certainly, tomorrow morning. Ed's head falls forward, his eyes pop, and his jaw drops in amazement. Once I thought that was gay body language, but then I learned it's Japanese. Do you know how sick I am? He's thinking, why should all of civilization rise to protect that stupid baby? In self-defense, I think, you are well enough to cook dinner, to paint, to dig in your garden. You could do it. It's your responsibility as a neighbor. And you still go out all the time. I blanch at the word still. Ed's really angry. I'm a whirlwind in his head. The baby that I can't save will not grant me permission to save some other life. His face is rigid and his mouth works on its own. I am not responsible for that baby. Don't I have enough problems to worry about? I don't know that baby. I don't know those people. I am trying to stay alive. I grin in desolation. Ed is slightly revolting. I remember the absorbing spectacle of that jaw working against me, perpetual motion of amazing insult, the smashed furniture, the wonder I felt when his fury jumped a quantum level, beyond caring, heedless. His thin body or anything could be thrown out to the blaze. I know when I'm licked. Giving up is hard work. The baby must live or die without us. The buggy plummets and I lack the willpower to alter its course. I picture Ed by his window, the witness to this drama that inspires no call to action. I watch TV to be somewhere else without exerting myself. Exertion is the only way to go somewhere else. So dissatisfaction builds up. It's hard not to be bitter overall, as though I'd actually seen all those daytime talk shows. The entire message of TV is that life is not fair, more daydream than night dream, yet the victim has his faults. Not so with Ed. When we were together, we watched TV with joy. In the early 70s, a cousin took pity on us and bought us a little black and white Zenith. We watched it through the night in Ed's studio. Ed painted and I kept him company. I am describing hours of perfect contentment. We liked Fred Astaire and musicals in general, but horror movies were even more histrionic. Ed and I felt delectation for these images of mayhem. In Ed's bedroom, light is a transparent rectangle, even though it's almost 9. The frosted glass arrests dappled shadows. Ed lies under the heavy indigo blanket, wasted. I lie on top, succulent. I'm happy to be lying down and feel perfectly relaxed on Daniel's side of the bed. The disease leads some of us into a deeper engagement with the world. Denny became a science writer for AIDS Treatment News. Loring joined Grand Fury. At Bo Houston's funeral, his mother says, "Thank you so much," as though I'd done anything. And before I could stop myself, I say, "Thank you," as though she'd done anything. An epidemic is like a mystery with heroes and villains. But I drift from my bedroom to Ed's bedroom where light falls through frosted glass in a certain way. Above us, the screen doles out images we love. Pre-World War II unknown lurches basso profundo through the shadows and dry ice. The supersized zoo of spiders, locusts, snakes, ants, and lizards climbs out of the squashed air of the 50s desert. Ed and I love bad horror films for the lyricism of their failed effects. We must be among the few to have twice seen Kuruku, Beast of the Amazon, a film that couldn't afford a visible monster or even gore. Branches twitch on the jungle trail. The mic slides into view. The victim screams off camera. Its very artificiality makes Kuruku a convincing exploration of the afterlife, like a church service. Tonight we watch a Mario Bava film in which moist decomposition replaces the genre's earlier effects, as though horror of decay is more germane to the present. It's weird to be lying next to Ed watching corpses rock back and forth in their own putrescence. The monster shows the world what she is. She throws open her robe with a triumphant expression to reveal a red chest cavity packed with roiling white maggots. Because of this image, I don't look Ed in the eye, as though I'd seen something too personal. What does he make of the skeletons with rags of flesh? I am the only one who can ask him this question, so I do. He rolls his head on the pillow and reminds me in a mild voice that he will be cremated, that decay is not the same as death. He says, my death is an emptiness that I can't feel. I am relieved, but why? We both know Ed will soon be reduced to ash. He's dying in stop action, like a good makeup job. The chaotic expression, the skeletal jeer, the pumpkin head wobbling with bon ami on the broomstick neck, the pinched nose, the eyebrows pulled back, the eyes starved and hurt. The monsters rise up while we sink into the pillows. But horror movies are actually comedies because death is reversible, or it's a consummation. The one taken by the monster experiences the full extent of his death. In his last scream, the victim faces the monster and dredges horror to the limit. A sexual consummation. He groans from the deepest place where his body, the world, begins. That is that. Let me read just a few of Ed's dreams, just to give you a taste. And I just selected just 4 of them out of the many. And then at least the reading part will see it. Let's see if people can get in. Here's a chair. Okay. Before that, a gray cat in heat moans and smolders. It lies on its side on a mound of coal. Gray, charring pebbles throw off intense heat. Daniel and I take turns shoveling coal on its side. Each shovelful makes it hornier, howling pain pleasure. I sense pain in the skin of its anus. It jumps, flaming fur and smoke, and rides midair. Before that, the memory of a huge Victorian in a meadow next to a small bay. Blackened by age, it shifts positions to house an aristocratic corpse who keeps his 2 young sons prisoner. One windy, wintry day, father and his long nose assign tasks and leave. The boys struggle, and father drives the sweeping curve of the coast, evil eye scanning from the corner for the slightest trace of love across the watery distance. Before that, the art teacher leads me to a private room for nude models. I pull a nylon navy blue scant over my thighs, sliding over dangling balls, catching my cock, pointing straight up as nylon hugs, adjusting it downward for comfort. It joins my balls as I bounce to set their places. Intense pleasure spreads from my sack. Now I rub my cock, stretching tight nylon deep blue, so the teacher can feel danger at my erection. He jumps down, mouth wide over pointed cock. Mother walks in. I throw a tantrum. Can't I develop my masculinity? Where is myself? This is the last. Before that 6 hands fondle me from behind, my erection grows. A cat licks my lips and then places his lips on mine. It sucks and pulls back, turning the kiss into a kiss with a smack. The door opens. The cosmos descends. The air is glass. The sky is infinite black, and each turning galaxy is before me. Vast space is defined, and I travel like a motionless comet through the vacuum. That's a taste of his dreams. That's it. Sure. I guess. Yes, sure, of course. What time is it? 7. We're done.